Switch gears, and I want to talk about what I guess you would call the Nick Saban trickle down effect. Because obviously, when a guy the stature of Nick Saban retires, the focus is going to be on one, him and his legacy, but then two, who is next at Alabama? Well, we got that answer on Friday. That was Kalen DeBoer. Spent a lot of time talking about that. But then the fascinating question becomes who replaces a guy that just won or was a runner up for a national championship at Washington? Obviously, an interesting time. They are heading to the Big Ten. Obviously, money is going to be much more abundant. And so we kind of just were curious as to who is going to be that next head guy. And bluntly, there were a lot of really intriguing candidates out there. Ryan Grubb, who had basically been DeBoer's right-hand man dating back to Sioux Falls, was his OC at Washington. Remember, Ryan Grubb had the opportunity to be Alabama's offensive coordinator last year under Nick Saban when Tommy Rees got the job, and instead decided to stay with DeBoer at Washington. A lot of people thought he would be the guy. We find out a little bit probably after midnight Eastern, very late, Saturday into Sunday, that he isn't going to be the guy. He releases a statement saying, I wanted this job. I thought I could get it, but it's time for me to move on. Thank you, Washington. From there, there's some Matt Campbell buzz. There's some Lance Leipold buzz. Thought it was very interesting that there was even a little Pete Carroll buzz. Of course, Pete Carroll is in Seattle, won a national championship, won a Super Bowl, wants to coach. But in the end, I'll give credit where it's due to the Washington AD, the new Washington AD, Troy Dannon, who it appears as though has landed Jedd Fisch as the next head coach of Washington. And let me just say, this is a stunner of all stunners. Arizona fans, I feel terrible for you. But the Washington perspective, there's nothing else to say other than that, my goodness, what a stunning hire and credit to Washington's AD. And so let's break it down. Again, we'll talk about the Arizona perspective. And I think there's a bigger picture conversation about college football as a whole here. But from the Washington perspective, this is about as good as you could ask for. And I'll be honest, I did my Fox Sports radio show on Saturday night when the Ryan Grubb news broke. And I said, I don't know if I like this move from Washington. Keep it in-house, keep it internal. This guy wants the job. Like, go ahead and just hire this guy. He's an elite coordinator. He will be a head coach soon. Just go ahead and hire this guy. Keep everything together, whatever. So I bring it up because I give Troy Dannon and the AD a ton of credit. He wanted a bigger name. He wanted a sitting head coach, and he got him. And right now, we don't have very many details on what the contract looks like, whatever. But they got themselves a heck of a coach in Jedd Fisch. Listen, this was a guy. I live on the West Coast. I've been to Tucson a couple times. Love the Arizona community. They've embraced me. Thank you, Tucson. To quote Tommy Lloyd, Tucson, what's good? But, you know, I bring it up because I've watched Jedd Fisch from a distance. I am so impressed with this guy, and I think Washington just got themselves a home run of all home runs. This is a guy, got to Arizona about 3-4 years ago, had largely an NFL background, although he had obviously coached in college as well. And I just loved the way that he attacked the Arizona rebuild. He was in a situation where it was as bad as it could possibly be at Arizona. And from there, I thought he was a very tactical recruiter. Took a lot of developmental guys, a guy like Noah Fafita, who of course was his quarterback who won a ton of games late in the season. But also I give him credit. He was a fearless recruiter as well. The criticism of his predecessor, Kevin Sumlin, was that Kevin Sumlin was like, this is Arizona. We can't recruit with the best of the best. And what ends up happening? Doesn't even go after local recruits, including, by the way, Bijan Robinson, who was in high school in Tucson. Kevin Sumlin never even recruited him. But I bring it up because Jedd Fisch was like, no, this is Arizona. We can win and win big here. Recruited, obviously, the kid T-Mac, Tatoria McMillan, was a fringe 5-star 2 years ago. So he got the developmental guys, but he wasn't afraid to go after the big fish either. 5-star kid, could have gone to pretty much anywhere in college football, was committed to Oregon. When Mario Cristobal leaves Oregon, he ends up going to Arizona, and he evolved into one of the best wide receivers in college football this year. And I think bottom line, he could be one of the best wide receivers in college football next year as he approaches his true junior season. beyond that. And I think this is important as well. Jedd Fisch had a great approach to the transfer portal. Went heavy, he recruited a lot of skill on offense out of the high school ranks, went heavy on defense last year, and that defense was significantly improved from 2022 to 2023. It's what allowed Arizona to go from 5-7 a year ago to 10-3 this past season. And so I like the way he recruits. I like the way he thinks. I like the way he builds a program. I like the way he does media. I just think he is a really, really smart guy. And again, I cannot say this enough. I give Washington so much credit for going out and getting this guy. I'll also say this is stunning to me because I didn't believe he was a real candidate. And you start to hear his name early in the process. And I texted some people that I know, and they kept saying, no, he's not a candidate. No, he's not a candidate. And again, we'll see what the contract ultimately looks like. We'll see if they made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. And again, the new world of college football, maybe they did offer him $10 million a year, $9 million a year. Maybe they did triple his salary. He was making about three and a half, I believe, at Arizona. And if that's the case, I don't know what Arizona could do, but why I was so shocked. He has a team that I believe is good enough to win the Big 12 next year. Remember, Arizona is going to the Big 12. Arizona had a team, 18 starters back off of a team that won 10 games this year. Beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl, beat Utah, beat whoever, name the team. They beat everybody. And so I am stunned that he chose this job, not only because I think, look, on the one hand, it's kind of what I said with Kalen DeBoer. This is, in theory, if he can retain everybody in the building, maybe the best team that he's ever had on paper. But you're also replacing a coach that nearly won a national championship. And you're also going into a conference that is going to be really, really, really hard. And I know everybody thinks you have to go to the Big Ten or the SEC if you get the opportunity. I disagree. Stay at Arizona, get to the college football playoff next year, and I'll be blunt. I think you have way better options than Washington. No disrespect to Washington fans that are watching this video, listening on podcasts, because I know you're going to yell at me. But you stay at Arizona, here's the bottom line. Jedd Fisch is a Florida alum. I think Florida's going to open in next November. I'm marking it right now, January 15th, 2024. I think by November 15th, 2024, Florida will be looking for a new head football coach. He could have gotten that job. With his NFL ties, he's already being talked about as a candidate at the NFL level. And so it's crazy to me because I think Arizona fans thought they were probably going to lose this guy. I don't think any of them thought they were going to lose him under these circumstances this offseason after they, there was a hint of a whisper of an A&M rumor, but instead they lose him to Washington. So Arizona fans, I feel bad for you, man. It's a gut punch because, you just get the 2024 season. Then if you leave for Florida, if you leave for the NFL, that's one thing. But to then, in theory, leave before 2024 for a job that I just don't think is that much better. I'm sorry, Washington fans. I wouldn't have done it if I was Jedd Fisch. I don't care about the money. The money will be there down the road. So it's a stunner. But what I think it really says to me, guys, I think it says we really are headed towards a new world of college football and a new world of college sports, but especially football, where I just think the Big Ten and the SEC, they're just going to have so much more money than everybody else. I don't know how the other conferences compete, and it sucks. And you wish it wasn't true. And look, there's going to be maybe a Florida State in the ACC, a Clemson in the ACC, maybe somebody emerges in the Big 12, Utah, TCU, Kansas State, maybe it's Arizona, who knows? But this is the reality, is that if Washington wants to just break the bank, and by the way, Washington's only getting half of the share that the other 16 teams in the Big Ten are getting. So Washington and Oregon are taking half of a share. But Washington, if they want to break the bank, they can break the bank. There's so much money in that conference and in the SEC, and these other teams can't keep up. And so it's interesting because it's the coaching salary, but here's the other part that I don't think, like the casual, I'm not blaming any fan, right? But what I don't think it's so much about just the head coach. What I think maybe even more importantly, when you are not in one of those conferences, it makes everything else harder as well. Okay, maybe you can raise the money in NIL to keep a star player, but can you keep, 5 other starters that you can't afford because you're paying the star guy like a lot of money? I think the assistant coach stuff is huge. Arizona lost an assistant coach on Sunday morning to Texas. This was before the Jedd Fisch news broke. They lost another defensive assistant to Texas earlier in the offseason because Texas can probably triple your salary. They can pay a safeties coach $900,000 if they need to. He's probably making $250 at Arizona. I remember talking to a group of 5 head coach coming off a very successful season this past summer. It's like the greatest thing we did. We got lucky. We were able to keep all our assistant coaches. We know we won't be able to do that in another year. If we have the success we think, people are going to want to double and triple and quadruple their salaries. And so to me, that is the new reality of college sports, and it really sucks. It's not just Arizona, by the way, and it's not just the head coach. It's that it is going to be so hard to keep teams together because assistant coaches are going to get so much money. And when you start losing assistant coaches, when you start losing players, you just kind of bang your head against the wall and say, I'd rather go to the Big Ten. I'd rather go to the SEC. I'll make my 10, 11 million. And if I get fired in 4 years, I'm set for the rest of my life. So this is the new reality. I think the assistant coach stuff probably weighed on him. And I just have a few more thoughts before we get out of here. One, from the Arizona perspective, you know what my honest opinion is? The most important thing they do over the next 48 to 72 hours themselves, get Noah Fifita, their starting quarterback, on board. I believe if you keep Noah Fifita, I think there is a great chance that you keep that locker room largely intact. I know T-Mac is a star. I know T-Mac probably has high 6-7-figure offers in NIL. But I believe if you can keep his quarterback, that's been his quarterback since high school, in that building, you keep T-Mac and you keep most of the roster together. You lose Fifita, whether it's to Washington, whether it's to somewhere else, I think you're in big trouble as far as keeping this roster is concerned. So keep Fifita, figure it out. I don't care what you got to do. And then from a follow-up perspective, I don't even know who the candidates are at Arizona. By the time you're listening to this, I'm sure Pete Thamel has put out some sort of report with names and suggestions and whatever. I can't even think of who would be the next head coach at Arizona. But man, like I just feel bad for Arizona fans. You're coming off a 10-win season. You return everybody. I think there was a thought, again, we bring back everybody next year. Whether it works out well or not, we're probably going to lose Fisch, and that's going to be okay. That's the reality of the situation. But to lose them to Washington, which I think is going to be the 5th, 6th best team maybe in the Big Ten next year, not better than Oregon, not better than Ohio State. Michigan, we'll see. It's just a big bummer.